Okay, we're also going to talk about a few irregulars in the preterite tense. We're going to talk about our stem changers. And there's only two types of stem changers this go round, unlike in the present tense. Verbs in the preterite tense could either change from an E to an I or an O to a U. That's it. Okay. All right. So if you look at a verb, what's in gold right here is its ending, and what's circled in red is its stem. So if it's a stem changer, what that means is there's going to be a spelling change in its stem. Can't get my arrow right. Okay. So stem changing verbs have a spelling change in their stems. Okay. So, and the difference between preterite and present is that in the present, if you remember, your spelling change happened everywhere but nosotros and vosotros. In the preterite tense, the spelling change happens only for third person. It only happens here for usted, él, ella. And here, ustedes, ellos, ellas. Okay. So, let's see. So, and you'll also notice that the E to I's, they are all IR verbs. Okay, so we've got pedir done for us right here. Let's do, for practice, let's do preferir. So if I wanted to do preferir, here's the verb preferir, okay, and it is an E to IE stem changer, and that means that its stem, when we start conjugating, I'm sorry, it's not an E to IE, it's an E to IE stem changer in the preterite tense. So then when we start conjugating it, that means that its stem could either be this or it could be this. Okay, and so I'm going to highlight in red when we use this spelling of the stem only for él, ella, usted, or ustedes, ellos, ellas. So if I wanted to start conjugating preferir, am I going to use pref or prefer or prefer for yo? Well, I'm going to use prefer because it's not in red. So I would do preferi. That's how I say I preferred. Okay. If I wanted to ask you if you preferred something, again, I'm going to use preferiste because it's not in red. Well, when I get to usted, I am in the red box, so I am not going to use prefer this time. I'm going to use prefiero. Okay, and let me just make sure all this lines up. Okay, and down here, I'm outside of the red again, so I'm not going to use prefer, I'm going to use preferimos. Not prefer, but preferistes. Okay, but down here now, I am in the red box, so I'm going to use prefirieron, Firieron. Okay, and so you can see that I used the IR because I'm in the red. Okay. Oops. Okay. So that's the way that we would do all of these that are E to I's. And you'll notice down here they have I, E. Well, what that is these guys are stem changers in both the present and the preterit, and that's how they would write it. The first one, the spelling change that you see on the left-hand side, that is the present tense spelling change, and on the right-hand side is how a verb changes into the preterit. So all of these guys, you could actually, you know, this is all that you're interested in right now because we're working in the past tense, not in the present. So all of these guys, even though they aren't the same necessarily in the present tense, they are the same in the preterite tense. Okay. The other spelling change that you'll see in the preterite tense is O to U. Okay, so verbs like dormir and morir, they change, their O's change to a U just for usted, él, ella, ustedes, ellos, ellas. Okay, so you can see how dormir is, let's say we wanted to do morir. Morir is to die. So if I did morir, morir is also an, in the preterite tense, it's an O to U stem changer. And so that would make it could either be more or mur. Okay, and so you only are going to use mur where the red is. Okay, so if I wanted to go through and conjugate morir, it would be, would I use more or mur? It's not in the red, so I'm going to use more, mori. Then moriste, because it's not in the red. Now I am in the red, so I'm going to use more, murió, murió, murió. Oops. Okay. Okay. Then down here, when I want to do it for nosotros, again, I'm out of the red, so I would use more, morimos, moristeis. Now I'm back in the red, so I'd use morieron, morieron. Okay, and I'm going to put a little box around these, had the stem change because they fell in the red. Okay, another stem change happens with verbs that have two vowels next to each other in their infinitive form. What happens with these guys, unlike seguir, because seguir, even though it has two vowels in its infinitive form, it doesn't match these guys because the U in seguir is silent, so it doesn't have a sound, so that's why I wouldn't fall in this group. But if your two vowels in your infinitive form both have a sound and there's two vowels next to each other, when you conjugate them out, it would be too much. For example, if I did what I was supposed to, this would be creio, and this would be, you know, creio, and this over here, oh, I don't know if I can move it. Okay, that's too hard to say. Creí, creíste, creío. It's too hard to say. So instead, what happens when you would end up with three vowels when you're conjugating is they change that I to a Y. So creío becomes creyo. And that would be the same case down here because it would be creieron. Creieron. Well, that's too hard to say. So when you conjugate with three vowels next to each other, you go ahead and change your I to a Y and make it creyeron. So let's see here. So when you end up with this scenario, let me make it smaller. That's just too hard to do, so you don't do it. You do this instead, okay? And I'll write it up here so you can see it again. You would end up with creio. So when you end up with this scenario, come on. Okay, it's just too hard to say, so we change that I to a Y and make it creyo. And that would be the same thing as over here. Oi, o, and oi, eron. It's just too hard to say, so we don't do it.